So you liked The Gutter Prayer and you're wondering if you should read this book? Let's see, shall we? Welcome or welcome back to Mad on Books, where I talk about fantasy mostly, science fiction sometimes, and comics occasionally. The book is The Shadow Saint by Gareth Hanrahan. I want to point out right from the beginning, I made a mistake in previous videos and said this was a trilogy. There are 3 books out, which is why I kept making that mistake. But I was wrong. There is going to be a 4th and a 5th book. They are not out yet. Gareth has actually told me that the 4th book is partially written and the 5th book is plotted, but they are definitely going to exist eventually. No dates yet, but not a trilogy, just to be clear. So if you're looking for a completed series to start, this isn't the one. Also, I want to say, if you're watching this, you should have already read The Gutter Prayer. I will be referring to The Gutter Prayer, and there will be mild spoilers for The Gutter Prayer. So if you haven't read that yet, check out my video on it, go and read it, and come back later. So getting the basics out of the way first, this is the book, The Shadow Saint, 2nd book in the Black Iron Legacy, which is, as I said, not actually a trilogy. It was published in 2020 by Orbit, and this edition has got about 560 pages. So what's it got? The characters from the first book, thoroughly changed. Politicking and intrigue. A nerdy girl discovering her own strength. Spies, a nation of people who reanimate when they die. An acquisitive nation with thoroughly insane gods. A crime syndicate run by dragons. Severely scarred survivors of the gods' war. And like The Gutter Prayer, a truly epic, world-changing conclusion. So in The Gutter Prayer, we got used to following around Carrie, Spar, and Rat. And all 3 of them have changed quite a lot. Carrie, probably the least. Spar, at the end of The Gutter Prayer, died and was transformed into a huge part of the city. And Rat became essentially the king of the ghouls, a huge, kind of terrifying monster. They are still in the book. All 3 of them feature heavily, but none of them are POV characters this time around. This time we get Elidora Dutton, who was in the Gutter Prayer. She is the cousin of Carrie, who was one of our main POV characters in the first book. Elidora was also a character in the first book, a POV character. But in this one, she's kind of the main character. She's now involved in the interim government, the emergency council. So much has happened in Guerdon, the city that the book is set in, that the government has kind of fallen apart, and there's a temporary government, which is the Emergency Council. And Elidora Dutton is involved in getting a particular party, a particular politician elected for the more stable continuing government. There is Teravant Erevesic. Teravant Erevesic is the youngest son of the Erevesic family, which is a family in Haith. Haith is the country where people automatically reanimate, where they essentially become undead immediately when they die. They have little sorceress things embedded in their bones, and when they die, they immediately become some form of undead. There's a whole caste system, different kinds of undead. It's a really interesting thing. So this is an expansion of the world. They were mentioned briefly, I think, in The Gutter Prayer, but in this one they feature much more heavily because Teravant, this character, he's the youngest sort of loser son of the Erevesic family, and he's charged with bringing the Erevesic sword, which is a magic sword that stores the souls of people in the family when they die, bringing that to his brother, who is the ambassador to Guerdon. And you can say Teravant is kind of a fuck-up son. So he's trying somehow to make up for some of his past, which wasn't so great. And he's trying maybe to get the admiration of his brother. And it doesn't always go that well for him. We also have a spy who is best just called the Spy because he has many cover personalities. He's a spy from Ishmir, and Ishmir is a country where the gods are absolutely insane and hell-bent on war. And at the point in this book, Ishmir is the country that is basically winning the gods' war. So they send a spy to the city who is looking for the god bombs, which we know from the Gutter Prayer. There are one god bomb was used, which we saw, but numerous god bombs survived at the end of the book, and they are somewhere in the city, and the spy is there looking for them, ostensibly working for Ishmir. The book focuses a lot on the changes in Guerden. The truly epic conclusion of the Gutter Prayer changed the city massively. There is the new city after the Gutter miracle, and the new city has become essentially a haven for criminals and questionable people and refugees from the Gods' War. So lots of people fleeing the Gods' War have come to Guerden to try and get away from it. So Guerden is a little bit overrun with refugees, and they're all people who have been semi or completely sainted. And that causes, of course, a lot of conflict and a lot of troubles, which are pretty interesting. Lots of strange magic things going on. The hidden god bombs are sort of the central part of the story. Numerous different people from Guerden, people from Ishmir, the spy, and others, and also the people from Haith, the undead nation. They're all, of course, interested in finding a weapon that can kill a god, or finding a weapon to keep it from killing a god. They're only mentioned a little bit, but I thought that one of the most fascinating expansions of the world, because in the first book, everything's in Guerden except one short chapter. The whole story takes place in Guerden. It's all right in the city. It's quite claustrophobic. It's all urban and very much focused on things going on in the city. In this one, Gareth is opening up the world, so it goes beyond Guerden. We get a little glimpse of Haith and how the royalty there functions, how the nobility there functions. We get a bit of a glimpse of Ishmir and their insane gods. And we get a glimpse of the island of Lyrics, which is where the Girdana are from, which are these crime syndicate, pirate syndicate families that are ruled by a dragon. And we only get a little glimpse of them, but they were to me one of the things that I was most fascinated by. I was like, okay, crime family run by a dragon. That sounds interesting. I'm sure it's going to come up much more in later books, but at the moment it was only slightly introduced. The feeling of the book, I said in my review of the Gutter Prayer, it had a bit of a roller coaster feel. It's quite fast paced. There's quite a lot of action. There's changes happening kind of constantly, and things really move along. In this book, at the beginning, it was clear that Gareth has got a lot of things he needs to set up. He's got a lot of new big concepts, new big places that he's introducing. And as a result, the beginning of it felt a little bit slow, and it took me longer to read. About halfway through, that pacing that I knew from the Gutter Prayer sort of started picking up. And from about the middle onwards, it's pretty fast-paced. Gareth himself, on his website, he described the plot of it in just one sentence. There's a review or a refresher of the Shadow Saint, and he described the plot at the beginning as lots of running around and probably too much politics. That's not a bad description. It jumps around to a lot of different places. We get the POVs jumping around between Elidora and Terravant and the spy. And there's a fair bit of traveling, which was pretty much non-existent in the Gutter Prayer in the first book. But it comes together all at the end, everybody kind of in the same place, and some very, very big deal things happening. And there are some really interesting arcs with the characters. There are characters who start out with a pretty clear position and attitude and goal. And over time, their characters actually change, which I really like in a well-written book. that there's some sort of development, that things actually impact the characters, that they think about them, change their minds about some things, and end up in a very different place than where they started. So there's a lot of that going on in this book, which I really liked. Like I said, it's a bit slower at the beginning, but it really does get going. And in the end, I actually liked it a lot. If I had to rate them against each other, I'd say The Gutter Prayer for me was more exciting. But this is a good continuation. Maybe it's middle book syndrome. We'll see how the third one is. But again, it's not a trilogy, so it's not really the middle book. But overall, I would definitely recommend this, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the rest of the series. As far as the cover goes, I don't have that much to say. The layout is basically the same as the first one. The illustrator is the same person, Richard Anderson, and I think he's done a lovely job. I talked about it in my first review, the Gutter Prayer review. The covers just sort of glow, and I really like especially how they look together. The thing that I would say about this one that actually kind of annoys me is this coating. It's essentially a plastic sheet that is laid over this to give it sort of a matte sheen, which looks awesome when it's brand new and starts peeling off if you handle the book. I have not put this in my bag. I have not thrown it across the room. I have not treated it badly. It's basically been either in my hand or sitting on a table the entire time I've owned it, and yet it's peeling off. I would love to encourage Orbit and all publishers not to use this kind of coating, to either get a better quality coating, which I know costs more, or maybe just do without and give it a normal glossy finish. But this is kind of garbage. It feels like the book's ruined, even though I've treated it quite well. I've just read it. So that's it for The Shadow Saint. I hope I have made you curious. I hope if you have read The Gutter Prayer, you're going to read this. I hope if you haven't read The Gutter Prayer that you didn't watch this video. Let me know down in the comments if you've read this book, what you thought of it, what you thought of The Gutter Prayer if you've read it. And as always, keep reading awesome books. And I'll see you next time.